Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissack and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Thanks so much for tuning in on this week's episode. We are having part 2 of the interview that I did with Linda and our friend Tony DiCello on the market. We had lots of great feedback from last week's episode, part 1. They just share so much value and so much to learn. So get your notebooks and your pens ready to take some notes. And we can't wait to hear what you learn from today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. We look forward to having some episodes in February that you guys are just going to love. We've got some couples episodes and including our husbands, Adam and Jimmy. So that was our second most downloaded episode, I believe, year before last when Linda and I had them on, and we're looking forward to having them back for you guys this month too. So enjoy today's episode, and we will see you next week. When you guys were selling and thinking about people who are unwavering, meaning that they've gone through up and down in every market, like what were the things that you guys had and you saw in those agents that never wavered, like they've continued through and through?
Finding leads.
Yeah.
Page 43 in MREA says what? You got to have enough leads to what? Got to have enough leads to reach your goal. So no matter what business you're in, whether you're an insurance salesperson or an attorney or whatever, you have to have enough leads to reach your goal.
I would say focus on listings, and they got great at communication. Communication fixes everything with people. And the more you communicate, the better service, the more they refer you. And in this market, you need as many referrals as possible. So focus on listings, get really, really good at great listing presentations, like really master a great listing presentation. And with all the things Tony's just mentioned and we talked about, and focus on being a strong listing agent, because listings will always bring a buyer.
Yep. And I talked to a realtor. They did this last year. They did about just slightly under 1,000 closings. All new people that come to his team have to practice scripts and dialogues for 2 hours a day. They're not on the phones. They're not going listing presentations. For the first quarter, they have to practice 2 hours a day. That's 13 weeks times 5 hours. It's 120 hours. So at the end of 120 hours, they're tested on their skill. And what happens to those people when they start their business on the first day of the next quarter? With 120 hours of scrap practice and improvement, what happens the first day they're on the phones?
They get success. They certainly don't sound new.
They get success. I talked to Harrelson. He's got a new guy on his team. He set 5 listing appointments his first week, but he also had to go through training on those scripts and dialogues and the listing presentation, and he would not be allowed to make calls and or go on a listing presentation until he passed the test. And he set 5 appointments his first month or his first week. Why? Because he had perfected his scripts and dialogues, and Linda, he had perfected his listing presentation.
Mm-hmm.
How many listing presentations did you go on, that you didn't get? Probably very few towards the end of your career.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys, I've been talking to a lot of agents that haven't been using listing presentations the last 2-3 years. They haven't had to. They've been, some of you on here, maybe some of those people, they've been showing up and getting the listing, and they've never had to present or have a listing presentation or, compete with another agent. Thank you, Chris, for actually being honest. And that is something that's going to have to change. It always changes anytime we're in more of a shift.
Well, and Tony hit on it, but remember, it's all about questions and about them. So, on the front end, on a scale of 1 to 10 this evening, 10 being this is a great meeting for you, 1, I totally waste your time. What has to happen in this meeting for you to feel great about it? Because number one, you got to figure out what they expect. Some people will say, well, I want to get my house on the market and I need you to help me figure out the price. Good. I know I got the listing, right? Some will say, well, I just want to know why I should choose you. That's great. We hate that question, but you want it now because then you say, well, actually, one of 3 things are going to happen here this evening. Number one, you're going to see the benefits of listing your home with the McKissack Group, and that would be great. Number 2, you might not see the benefits of listing your home with the McKissack Group, and that wouldn't be so great. Or 3, you might have a need or an expectation in the sale of your home that I don't feel like I can meet or exceed. And would you agree that that's one of 3 things that could happen this evening? Because number one, you want them to understand you get to choose them too. Right? That's different than anybody going in and groveling for the listing. But once I get the precedent set in that listing presentation, then I can get them to prioritize what's most important to you. Because we automatically go in and think it's always price. You'd be surprised how many times it's time. They don't want to give up. I mean, they'll give up money to get it done quicker. So you got to figure all that out also. And if you just go in with that beginning basis of, okay, this is how I'm going to do my presentation each time, then you're going to have the information you need to now go forward and do your presentation.
Yep.
Love that.
Yeah, I just read in the Ultimate Sales Machine, the updated version is we have to be educators, not salespeople.
Yeah.
We have to use statistics like you just did, Dana.
Yeah.
To say there aren't buyers and sellers. Well, you just gave us about 3 million leads.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those 3 million leads aren't enough to find enough buyers because we ended the year, give or take 4 million. So there's room in real estate for tens of millions of leads because I've seen anywhere between 4 and 4.5 million sales next year. Which is what? 4 million sales is what? 8 million sides.
Yeah.
Now it goes back to, I think I've heard this statement before, get your unfair share of the 4 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it boils down to. Have a plan to get enough appointments to do your unfair share. And there's no reason you can't have a plan to double your business over last year.
Yeah.
Just get enough appointments to double your business. That's all.
When we hear people say that most of the time agents don't have a lead problem, they have a follow-up problem. Will you guys speak about that a little bit? Any thoughts you have around that, and or do you agree, disagree?
Well, they say 80% is follow-up. 80% is whether somebody follows up or not. Pay attention to your own self. When I go somewhere to look at something, we're shocked at the people that don't follow up with us to see if we want to buy. It's just shocking.
Yeah.
And we're buyers. Most of the time in those situations, we're buyers. So I think we either get busy or we don't have a system, or we somehow feel like because we didn't get it the first time that we should feel bad. You just need to add it as part of your system. Follow-up is, 80% of whether you're going to succeed or not.
Yeah. The internet has changed that. In the old days, it was probably, you could get 40% of your appointments on the first call.
Yeah.
Today, it's probably 10% or less because people are looking so far out.
Yeah.
So I just read a new statistic that most people do a transaction on the 9th contact, not the 7th anymore. It's now the 9th.
Wow. I haven't heard that.
Yeah. Well, what did they teach in Bold? The original Bold was 7 contacts, at least 7 contacts.
Right.
I coached a guy in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he took 100, almost 200 listings and expireds every year, FISBOs and expireds every year. And his game was, he called it last person standing.
Mm-hmm.
He just followed up until they didn't list, until they listed with somebody else or they listed with him. And that means all those people that Linda said don't follow up, he said usually after 5 calls, he's the only one left.
Yeah.
Now it's a matter of just getting an appointment with that person.
Yeah.
So the world of today is nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And the world of today says 36 nurtures is not enough anymore. Because why? Because of the competition. The competition for their brain. I mean, there's so much information being passed out every day. If you believe that information doubles every day, we got to stay in touch with them because they remember us for 30 seconds. And then the next piece of information, it may not even be real estate.
Yeah.
And I think that Disney book said that we're really in competition with everybody. We're in competition with everybody. So we've got to follow up and keep reminding them what we do to get what we do to help them get to their goals.
Yeah.
And if once they tell you what their timetable is, it's the follow-up call is real simple. If they say we're gonna do something in April, you just call them every week and ask them what question. Are you still planning on doing something in April? Yes, we are. Great. Call them the next week. Are you still planning on doing something in April? Or you want to make it any earlier or later? April's still good. Call them the next week. Are you still planning to do something in April? Now we want to move it up to March. If you would have waited to April to call them back, what would you have been?
Too late.
Yeah.
Too late.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder, Tony. And I think everyone on here needs to ask themselves, have they or would they be calling that many times with that question? Are you still planning on moving in April or doing something in April? Because most people, exactly like you just said, would have waited until the end of March to call.
Yeah, we were always taught to cut it in half. Now I think you got to be there all the time. There's just too many people looking for space on their brain.
And you could always call and, add value and say, by the way, while I have you on the phone, I show that you're looking to do something in April. Is anything about that changed? I mean, you could call with some value.
Right.
Hey, I know I just want to let you know the interest rates changed this week. They're now this. Now I show that you're interested in doing something in April. Is anything about that date changed? I mean, you could add some, more to it in a conversation or add value for those of you that, want to add some kind of value each time you call.
I think, have we gone too long for you?
No, we still have, actually, I was going to have 5 more minutes, and then you guys, I was going to do the last 10 minutes for questions. So if you guys have questions, get them ready and type them in the chat. If not, we'll finish early, but I'm hoping since we have 2 super smart brains, you guys will have a couple of questions. But I have one or Tony, were you going to share something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. When we look at top agents right now and their touch plans, and I know a lot of you guys talk to a lot of people who are top agents. Tony, you said obviously we know 36 doesn't cut it anymore. What are you guys hearing are the top number of touches that people are doing now? Like I'm hearing well into 200s a year.
Yeah, I've heard the biggest number I've heard out of the Gary group was somebody said they were doing 200 contacts. I'm hearing probably 60 to 100
annual touches. Yeah. And I'd say that's about right. Linda, have you heard any different?
I haven't heard any different, but I think also it depends on, who you're calling, how warm that lead is and those kinds of things. But I think the colder the lead is, obviously you're going to have to make more calls to do it. But with touches and things like that, I think Tony's right. I think we're so used to very quick information, and it's so quick, and we're next to the next email that came through or the next Instagram or whatever, that we're going to have to really maybe diversify the way we touch, but touch a lot more.
Yeah. Okay. Last question I have, then we'll open it up. Think about when you all were both still selling. How did you kind of push through to keep going when like that next tougher market came? Because I'm just hearing a lot of people who are saying, do I want to keep doing this? And so I'm wanting you guys to kind of speak from personally on that.
First of all, if that person said to me, I'm thinking about getting out of business, I'd buy their business. That's the first thing I'd offer them is I'll help you get out. In fact, I'll give you the opportunity to retire. I'll buy your business.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting. The guy that bought my business, I didn't That was before Gary wrote the book. That was the dumbest thing I ever did, was sell my business. I thought it was a big deal. I sold the business in 1999 for $300,000.
Yeah.
I probably could have made $100,000 a year for the last 23 years. So that's about 2.3 million. So what was better, 300,000 or 2.3 million? But anyway, I just think if you build consistency and build your database big enough, nothing will falter that would give you the anxiety to get out of the business. Nobody I'm talking to that has been consistently lead generating for years and years and years and years, database or farm or whatever they're doing, they're not talking about anxiety. They're talking about, how do I have our biggest year? How do we gain market share? How do we dominate markets? They're not saying, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. They're going, this is a perfect time. How do I get more market share?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think people who are asking that question, they're listening to what has to be done, because here's the thing. It's not rocket science. Honestly, real estate success is really simple, but not easy, right? So I think what happens, because I remember exactly feeling this way when I would hire a freaking coach to make my whole team cold call. I'd cold call. I hated my life. I didn't want it. So instead of quitting, I said, what other ways can you do this? And my aha was, Disney doesn't build Disney by cold calling. IBM isn't building IBM by cold calling. There's got to be a different way. There's got to be a way that will give me energy, that I will have fun and I will enjoy. And so what I would say to that person is, and a perfect example is, we taught wealth building in Kalispell while we were up here in Montana. And the girl comes up to me and she said, I'm relatively new in the business. My mentor wants me to do video. I absolutely hate video. I said, okay, I get that, because when press tried to make me do video, I hated it, right, in the beginning. But what you got to do is ask yourself, what could I change so that I would enjoy it? And I said, for me, I like to have a co-host, or I like to do interview style. I said, what about if you change the way you look at this and you thought, I'm going to go to Whitefish. This is the resort community that she's in. And I'm going to interview all the business people, and I'm going to turn my focus away from me and onto them. How do I serve them? They always say when you're like down in the dumps, the best thing you can do is go serve someone else. So I said, what if you went to every local small business in Whitefish and said, I'd love to do an interview with you on video. Now it's all off of you and it's all onto them. So I think because number one, there is no better industry in the world. What are your options? I know when I would ever have this thought, which I think I had at least once, I'd go get my resume out and I saw that I made minimum wage before I did real estate. And I thought, oh, hell no, I ain't doing that. that sounds awful. My budget's way bigger than minimum wage these days. So that was
your hourly expense is bigger than minimum wage.
So I think when you say, well, what are your options? I mean, literally, if you they're going to give you a job description. If you go get a job and you follow the job description, why don't you just follow this job description? And why don't you just sit down with somebody that can help you see things differently? Because I would want to know, why are you wanting to quit? Is it because every way you hear to do the business, you don't like it, or you don't know how? I mean, what would cause you to do that? Because there is no better industry out there. Unless you did something amazing before you got into real estate, that you miss and you love and you can't wait to go back to. But I don't think anybody's got into real estate because they loved what they used to do.
Yeah.
So I think I would try to figure out, okay, there's more than one way to do this. And I don't care, how you get it done. You just got to get it done. That's what Press said to Anna when she became runner-up rookie of the year. She would not do the prospecting. He said, Anna, that's fine. You don't have to do the prospecting, but somebody does. So they hired an ISA. So I would just say, can you maybe figure out what it is that makes you want to quit? And figure out, because this is not a complicated business. This is a very simple business. It's just not easy. And especially not easy if you think there's only one way.
Yeah. And that's the part is, there's a million ways of doing real estate. I had a client when I was coaching. He did that with all the businesses. He was a resort market, very similar to Whitefish. He did that with all the businesses. And you know how he selected the businesses? Based on the size of their database.
Yeah.
His first interview was with a restaurant who was in that market for 123 years that had over 100,000 followers. And he said, I'll do an interview with you and send you to all my clients if you send me to all your clients. So he does one video, and actually it's a restaurant, and he had them make their specialty, and he sent it to everybody. But they also sent it to over 100,000 people that he got introduced to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so every month he did a business, and it turned out to be one of his best sources, and he loved doing it. Just like, you know, if the guy in Phoenix that has the farm, Kenny Klaus.
Oh yeah.
Kenny was a FedEx driver, so he had a route. All he did was take the FedEx route. Instead of making it 100,000 a year, he makes millions a year by doing the same job, just doing it differently. And all he did was start introducing himself to everybody in his farm. Mm-hmm. And he just did it by zip code, because that's the way he set up his FedEx route, or UPS, I can't remember, whatever, too. But anyway, find a way that you enjoy it. How did Linda enjoy the business? She hired Brad. And so you have to go on any more appointments, didn't have to do any prospecting, didn't have to work with a buyer, didn't have to work with a seller, and enjoyed it for 16 years. He did all the work, and they collected part of the money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Call the 7th level business.
Yeah.
And guess what? That business is still in existence 20 some years later. How many years, Linda?
He ran it for me for 20. He ran it for me for 20, and it's probably been another 8 or so at least.
So the business is 28 years old. The Harkers, they kept their business going. The business is now almost 60 years old, and it's feeding generations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. Okay, 2 quick questions, and actually one of them I'm going to answer in the chat. Before Karen said 100 touches. Does this include social media? It would be tough to have the time to do 100 touches per year for each individual client. Trying to find creative ways to increase my touches. Karen, I'm going to share with you, you guys in the chat. We've had Brittany McAllister on many times, but she's amazing. But she does 175 touches, and her system is like one of the best I have ever seen. And she's in a small town doing a lot of business. But yes, when you get to that many touches, your biweekly emails, your social media, it's impossible when you don't have the systems, but with the system, you can easily do 100 touches a year.
I would also say, Dana, to do group, anything one-on-one is super expensive of your time. It's like the most expensive thing you could do with your time, but you can always put 50 people in a room and have, 100 eyeballs looking at you instead of, 2.
Right. Yeah. And the touches. Yeah. And the thing of it is, the more the touches, the more you have to use technology.
Right.
Like the biggest database I've heard is over 300,000. Well, how do you touch 300,000 people? Well, you put enough links in there into each email that they click, and what have they done? Every time they click, they do what?
Touch.
I'm a nurture.
Yep.
I'm a nurture. So now I'm just following up on all the out of 300,000 people. I only might get 300 nurtures, but that email just picked me up 300 nurtures.
Yeah.
How do you build a database of 300,000 people? You communicate with a lot of people who raise their hand over the years. So when Brad took over Jimmy and Linda's business, they had built such a database that the transition was easy because they were already trained to use Jimmy and Linda. Now they use Brad because the service was so great. They don't care who provided the service as long as the service remained great. Agree or disagree, Linda?
Yep, absolutely. Even though I thought it was going to be totally different, they were all going to crumble when I left. They didn't.
They didn't crumble, did they?
No.
Because remember, didn't Gary ask you, do you want to do the business or do you not want to do, or do you want to let Brad do it or something?
That was the key question. Do you want that job or do you want Brad to have it? And I was like, oh crap. I definitely want Brad to have it at this point in my life.
Okay, last question we're going to go out on. Sarah wants to know, she said, you said, I think maybe Tony, somebody said this, most people overvalue intensity and undervalue consistency. What would be your all's advice for building consistency and pulling through on the hard days, she said?
I'll give you an example. I coached a gentleman that lead generated almost every day, maybe possibly every day. So, and when he did lead generate, he was supposed to start at 9 o'clock. He never started at 9 o'clock. I'm saying if you can consistently be late, then you should be able to be consistently on time. So we set it up that he started every day at 9 o'clock, and he was a single agent at the time. And it cost him $200 a minute to be late.
Wow.
And he said, I'll do 50. And I said, could you write a check to do, for, if you were 10 minutes late, could you write a check for $500? They said, yeah. Well, then I want you to have a number. Like Jeff Quinton wanted to be at the gym at 5:30. He had to text me when he hit the door. For him, it was $25,000 a minute to be late.
Woo.
I don't care what the number is, but it's got to be a number that you do not want to write that check or pay that consequence. Anyway, Gene started every day at 9 o'clock. He had to text me at 9 o'clock a.m. $200 a minute. He's never late. So he did that for 5 days, and then he did it for 10 days, and then he did it for 15 days, and he did it for 20. And that year, the year he started, he did 435,000 in GCI. The next year, with just being consistent at starting at 9 o'clock, he went to 850.
Doubled just from being consistent.
So the next year he was consistent and now had a team, and everybody started at 9 o'clock. He went to 1.6.
Wow.
2 years later, he was at 5.
Wow.
Now everybody started at 9 o'clock, and they do it every day. I talked to the guy that he does thousands of closings a year. And for 23 years, his team has not missed a day of lead generation. Started by himself, then a small team, then a little bigger team, and a little bigger team. So just find one thing you want to do consistently that will help you find appointments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the thing. I don't care if you start consistently for 10 minutes. Start at 9 o'clock and quit at 9:15. Just do it for, if it's a challenge, do it for 15 minutes. But what if you make one call?
Mm-hmm.
That one call could be, I can't think, you just told me is for your financial planner.
Oh, John White.
John White. That one call could have been you.
Yeah.
Mike Ferry had a lady that made one contact a day. Now she was in La Jolla, but she just by one contact a day, every day for 250 days, she went and added probably $1 million a year to her business by just one contact for her and one contact for her daughter a day, and every day. So even if you just make one contact a day every day, would your business be better?
Yeah, it's like our focus this year, do less, more.
So don't overburden yourself with a goal that, well, I'm going to do 3 hours a day. Well, if you've never done 3 hours a day, you're not doing 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Just start at 9 o'clock and do 30 minutes.
Yeah, read Atomic Habits, because it will tell you to just start at the smallest amount that takes no willpower to do it. And then when you're procrastinating on anything, ask, am I missing a who or am I missing a system? Because one of them is missing when you're procrastinating, because none of us are real people that don't want to accomplish what we say we want to accomplish. So who's the who that can help me get it done, or what's the system that I need to put in place? Because if I was going to do it, I would have already.
Yeah, love it. Well, we're 1 minute over. I have 2 whole front and back of my pieces of paper. So thank you guys. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Tony, so much for all of your time
Have
to
fun.
Great. Have a great 2024, everyone.
Yep,
Thank
same
you
here.
for
Go
being
make it a
on.
great 2024.
Make it a great 2024.
Make it a
That's right. Thank you all. Have a blessed day. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.